All right, everybody, let's study. What? What? You don't want to study? No. Nobody in here likes studying? Are you kidding? Why, it was one of my favorite things to do. No, I'm just kidding. Come on, how many of you guys have ever given an excuse for not studying? Allison, how about you?
If you have a test the next day and you've studied enough but you want to stop and your mom comes in, get off the phone, and you tell her that you had a good test grade the day before and she leaves you alone and you can watch TV.
I had probably the best excuse when I was a kid. I came up with this great excuse that aliens had come down from outer space, visited my house of all the houses, and sucked all the information out of my head. Assuming you could walk out of this room, you're 30 years old, you're doing whatever you want to do with your life, okay? What do you think you're going to use?
English.
I think it would probably be math.
History.
Don't you think that sometimes there might be too much to learn? Megan, how about you?
Well, everything seems to come at the same time. I mean, you'll have a history term paper due, and then you'll have a school article due for your school newspaper, and it just comes at the same time.
I agree. Because some days I like to have a math test, a science test, and an English test, all on the same day.
Did anybody ever teach you how to study for all that? You have to learn how to learn.
So how do you learn how to learn?
Learning to learn means understanding how to get more from your studying. That's what this show's all about. It isn't easy, there aren't any tricks or shortcuts. But once you know World Book's study power system and use it every day, you can improve your study habits, your grades, and get more out of school. We're going to show you that a good system of studying will be important to you for the rest of your life. We're going to show you the best places to study. You're going to learn how to get the most out of your reading, how to listen and take notes in class. We'll give you tips to improve your general study habits, and we'll even give you exercises to let you practice. The first thing you should realize is that most of the skills you need for studying are the same skills you use in lots of other ways. Don't believe me? Well, who cares if a cashier shortchanges you because you can't count? So what if you can't fix your bike because you can't understand instructions? Hey, big deal. So you haven't been able to get a black belt in your martial arts class. What do martial arts have to do with studying? Well, let's take a look. The first thing you might do is observe your teacher. Next, you might ask a friend in your class about the techniques and listen to that explanation. Then you'll try what you've learned by doing, by practicing. That's what real studying is all about: observing, questioning, listening, and doing. But there's one more skill that's just as important as all the others: reading. Sure, you read all the time. Billboards, street signs, ads, menus in restaurants. But that's just getting by from day to day. There's a big difference when it comes to reading books. First of all, you have to want to. They're not going to jump off the shelves and into your head. You're only going to get back what you put into them. It's like anything you do. The harder you try, the more you get out of it. And if you think of reading only as schoolwork, you're missing an awful lot. There are books out there on all kinds of subjects. Subjects you want to know more about, like what did your favorite heroes do when they were your age? What made dinosaurs rulers of the earth? Or what might the world be like when you're older? Pick up a book and see your favorite ball player hitting a grand slam. How about going along on a rocket ship to the moon? You can be a time traveler and visit the past or the future. Go to your library and join a book club. Talk to other people about books and see what they're reading. If you read more about the things that interest you, you're going to find that you'll be better at reading for school and better prepared for what you want to do in the future. Everyone, whether a garage mechanic, a movie producer, a plumber, a computer programmer, or a nuclear physicist, has to read in order to keep up with the many changes that affect how well they'll be able to do their jobs. When you add reading to the other study skills of observing, questioning, listening, and doing, You create an unbeatable system so powerful that there's almost nothing you can't do.
I never would have dreamed that I would be in this position when I was back in school. It's a common misconception among some kids that if they eventually want to enter, say, the music business, all they have to concentrate on is music and forget about English or history or math. Of course, you have to learn your instrument and be proficient at what you do, but you're also, every day, you have to deal with people. Attorneys, you have to deal with record people, and you have to have the basics behind you. You know, there's a similarity between learning reading, writing, and everything you learn in school and learning music, the things that I'm doing right now. It goes hand in hand. The same learning process that I used and got used to and taught in school carries right through to my career right now.
Well, when I was in school, I was what you call average. C student. I did a lot of studying, but really didn't have a lot of good study skills. In school, you think after school that's the end of life. You know, you feel that I don't have to study anymore, but that's not true. Knowing how to study is very important. Now that I'm in business, you attend a lot of workshops and seminars, so you have to know how to study and how to go to a meeting and gather your notes and come back and go over what you've learned. So, no, it's not easy. It's, you know, and school is not easy either, but it's worth it.
Being a mechanic today involves a lot of continuous study. There's always the need to know more. They can't just study how to put a spark plug in a car, how to change the oil. The electronics are it, because the engine is run by a computer. We use the computer here, and I have a computer that I do all my business transactions on. I do all my customer follow-up system, my physical inventory, and my day-to-day bookkeeping. You can't just be a monkey wrench and put your head under the hood of a car today. You have to be able to talk to people, to write things down for people to read so they can understand that. They need their education.
You can see that studying doesn't stop when school stops. No matter what you do in life, you're going to find that studying is a part of it. But it's also a big part of your life right now. And we want to help you right now. Help you be the best student you can be. But let's begin at the beginning and find the best place to study. Here's a likely spot to start, Louie's room. Now, I happen to know that he got a lot of homework today, and I noticed the door's closed. Good, he must be in there, hard at work. Louie's in there all right, but doesn't look like he's getting much studying done, does it? Well, how can he? That stereo is so loud, there's no way he could possibly concentrate on his work. His light is so dim, I'm surprised he could even see the pages. And then he's made himself so comfortable that he couldn't help falling asleep. Oh, you definitely don't want to wind up like Louie in there. Sure, he's listening to music tonight, but he'll be facing the music in class tomorrow if he doesn't have his assignment ready. Well, the first thing to go is this loud music.
Hey, man, what happened to my music?
Hey, the music's cool, Louie, but don't you think it'd be easier to study if it was a little quieter in here?
But my music. I can't study without my music.
Oh, was that what you were doing when I came in here, studying?
I was taking a break.
Well, look at it this way. If you get your studying done first, then you can listen to your music without having all these distracting books lying around.
Hey, that's a good idea. Now, where did I put my English book?
Maybe if you turn the lights up, you'd be able to find it.
Oh, there it is on my desk.
What's up, Louie?
Well, I'm gonna do what you said. I'm gonna study.
Well, you know what happened the last time you laid on your bed, don't you? Maybe you'd be better off at your desk.
Oh, man, I'm gonna study. Just get off my back and let me get some work done.
Come on, Louie. Huh?
Wow, the things I gotta do just to listen to my music. Okay, I'll give it a try.
All Louie needed to do was change a few things, and he's on the right track. Now that he's at his desk, he has everything he needs right there. A dictionary, a thesaurus, pens, pencils, paper, even a set of encyclopedias.
Hey, I'll bet you wonder what I'm doing here relaxing while you're slaving over your studying. Well, I play it smart. I do as much studying as I can between classes at school. You say you can't study at school? I'll let the old pro show you how it's done. Just follow the same rules as at home. Find a comfortable spot with good lighting and as few distractions as possible. Try the library. It's quiet, and any reference books you might need are right there. If you still have problems, try talking about it with your teacher. I did, and now I'm enjoying the good life.
You'll remember we talked about the importance of reading, both for pleasure and for learning. Because textbooks are your main source for learning right now, we're going to show you how you can get the most out of your study reading. It's called the SQ3R system, and it will really help you to read and study better. SQ3R stands for the steps you use when reading assignments: survey, question, read, recite, and review. The best way to see how it works is to take a look at an actual textbook.
We'll be using an American history text. You'll get the most out of this exercise if you get one of your own textbooks and follow along. It doesn't have to be a history text. Almost any textbook will work.
Stop the tape for a moment while you get your text. When you're ready, push the play button and we'll continue. Now that you have your textbook, the first thing to do is survey.
Survey? Isn't that something you do to the ground?
I guess it means you look it over.
Well, the kind of surveying we're talking about here means reading the headings. Open your book to the beginning of a chapter and you'll see headings in bold print. Headings are like signposts that tell you where you are and what you're going to see. Reading these headings first gives you clues to what the section or chapter is about. In our book, there are 4 main headings, which break the chapter into 4 sections. Within these 4 sections, we have subheads in heavy print, which give more specific information. In addition to surveying the headings, you should also read the introduction or summary to the chapter. They're like movie previews. They tell you the plot. Surveying first will give you most of the important ideas contained in the chapter. Now, stop the tape again and spend a minute surveying the chapter you've selected in your own text. When you finish, turn the tape back on. Once you've surveyed the chapter headings, the next step is to try to turn them into questions.
What do you mean, questions? Is this a test?
This sounds difficult if you've never done it before, but making up these questions can help you learn because they make you think about what you're studying. I've asked Susan to help come up with some likely questions for our chapter. Let's look at the first main heading, Susan. Washington's first term. I can think of one question right away. When did he become president?
I can think of 2 more. Why was George Washington chosen as our first president, and what did he do in his first term?
You're getting the hang of it. Let's look at some subheads. I'll say, here's one that won't be easy. Neither king nor weakling. What do you think?
If he didn't want to be a king or a weakling, then what did he want to be, and how did he do it?
Let's do one more. Political parties begin. Susan, how about that one?
How about why did we need different political parties, and what were they called?
Hey, you're getting good at this.
Well, it's kind of fun. It's like making up my own game show.
I think you get the idea. Once you make up your own questions, look at the questions included in the chapter. These might be at the beginning or at the end. If you use these questions along with your own, they'll help you really learn and understand your assignment. Stop the tape and try making up some questions from the headings in your textbook. Turn the tape back on when you're finished. Okay, now that you've surveyed the headings and made up some questions about them, it's time to read.
Sure, I always read my assignments.
Well, I guess I don't read as much as I should.
Reading is basic to studying. The key is the way you read. Say, Susan, when you read textbooks, what do you concentrate on?
The words, I guess. What else is there?
How about charts and graphs? Or picture captions? footnotes, activities, appendices.
I always thought those things weren't very important. You know, they're just there.
You have to remember that everything in your textbook will help you learn about the subject. When you read them along with the main text, it's called reading aggressively. Reading to get all the information you can.
Yeah, but it takes so long to read my assignments anyway. I have to have some time for myself too, you know.
That's just what I'm talking about, time. If you take the time to read it thoroughly once, you'll save time when it comes to reviewing. So you sacrifice a little time now and save a whole lot later. But remember, improving at anything takes time.
All right, I'll try it.
Well, by now you know it's time to try it yourself. So stop the tape and turn it back on when you've read your chapter. Now that you've read aggressively and thoroughly, you need to recite.
We used to recite poems like Hickory Dickory Dock, the mouse ran up the clock. How's that? I'd feel funny.
Reciting means answering your questions out loud, without looking at the book. You might feel funny at first, but reciting the main ideas will help you see how well you've read the section, and will also help you remember it better. Answer the questions you made up, and give an example for each. If you can do this without looking at the book, then you can continue with the SQ3R process in the next chapter. But if you can't, you need to go back over the chapter until you succeed. Okay, Susan, why don't you give it a try?
Okay, here it goes. Washington became president on April 30th, 1789. He was chosen to be president because most people thought he was the only person who could run the country. In his first term, he had to face many challenges.
Susan's next step would be to answer the questions at the end of the chapter. If she answered all of those correctly, she could go on to the next chapter and start the process again by surveying the headings, forming questions, reading aggressively, and then reciting the major ideas. Stop the tape here and try reciting what you've learned from the book you were using. Start the tape again when you're finished.
Scoop News world famous reporter here. They call me Scoop because I take notes all the time, even when I read. Why do I take notes when I read? Because information is news and I need to remember it. So I make an outline. I write down the main ideas as I come to them. Then I list all the important information that goes with each main idea. By the time I've done reading, I've got all the facts I need to do the job. Speaking of jobs, I've got a deadline to meet. See you on the front page.
The final step in SQ3R is to review.
Well, it's like preview is before and review is after.
In SQ3R, reviewing means looking back over the material while it's fresh in your mind. When you review, you're doing two things. You're making sure you understand all the information, and you're going to remember it better. In order to make SQ3R work best, your review should include each of the first 4 steps of surveying, questioning, reading, and reciting. If you've already discussed the subject matter in class, you should also review your notes at the same time so that you understand all the information and how it fits together. Now, stop the tape again and review what you've done up to this point. Then turn it back on when you're ready. Once you get used to the SQ3R method, you should be able to read better, pick out important points faster, and remember them easier. It might seem difficult at first, but if you practice and use it on every assignment, you'll find it won't take much more time, and your grades should improve.
Hi.
Sherlock here. I'm always coming across words I don't know when I'm reading. So what do? Elementary, my dear Watson. I look them up. I make a list of all the words I don't know. Then I write down their definitions. I add more new words to the list as I keep reading and review them to make sure I still remember them. As a matter of fact, I'm on the trail of a new word right... Ah, of course. Gumshoe. A detective. Isn't that a coincidence?
Your teachers are one of the most important sources of information you have. Most teachers give you information that you won't find in your textbooks, and if you don't write it down, you'll probably forget it. So you need to listen and take notes at the same time.
Huh? Could you repeat that?
Listening and note-taking are also skills that you learn through practice. Let's take a look at a typical classroom situation and see what you need to do. If you don't have assigned seating, sitting in the front or the center of the classroom is one way you can greatly improve your concentration. If you sit too far away, you can be very easily distracted, perhaps by looking out the window.
Formed their own nation called the Confederate States of America.
Flight 513 from London, calling Control Tower. We're approaching at 5,000 feet and request landing instructions.
Control Tower to Captain Roberts.
Judy Roberts. What was I just talking about?
See what can happen when you don't pay attention?
Yeah, I'm so embarrassed.
You know, paying attention in class isn't always enough.
What do you mean? I thought it was important.
Well, it is, but let me ask you something. What do you do if the teacher says something you don't agree with?
Well, I get upset and start thinking about what the teacher said. Oh, I see what you mean. If I stop listening, then I'm missing what the teacher is saying.
That's right. Having an emotional reaction gets in the way of learning in class.
But what can I do about it? I mean, I'm only human. I can't help getting upset.
Well, do yourself a favor. Save the emotional reaction for later on when you have time to think about it. If you give your teacher the benefit of the doubt, you'll be the one who really benefits. Try listening aggressively, concentrate as hard as you can on your teacher, and get the information down on your notes. That way you don't miss something that might show up on the test.
Well, I don't know. I don't see how concentrating is going to keep me from getting upset. Maybe I'll try it and see how it goes.
That's the idea. Trying it is the first step. I don't think you'll be disappointed. You know, studying your assignments before your class can help you get the most out of it. If you know the subject matter beforehand, it'll be a lot easier to pick out major points and take good notes. Of course, some teachers speak rapidly or don't pause to give you time to write careful notes. That's why you need to make up your own shorthand. You might try skipping unnecessary words or drop word endings like tion and ing, and abbreviate words whenever possible. By doing this, you'll be able to write down the information you need and still keep up with the presentation. You can really make progress if you take notes in an outline form. This lets you organize your notes as you write them and keeps important information together. And speaking of important information, don't forget to write down your assignments.
I'm looking at my class notes, and they're a mess. They're jotted down on itty-bitty pieces of paper, and I just can't make sense out of them. What do I do now? Organize. I'm going to use a loose leaf binder for taking notes. I use tabs to make sections for each subject, and I can keep extra paper in each section for when I need it. Once I've finished my notes, I can organize them so that the notes on the same material are placed together. When it's time to study or review, I'll have all my information bound up in one easy-to-use place. Pretty good idea, huh?
When you're listening to a teacher's presentation, watch for cues from your teacher that signal important information you'll want to write down. Phrases such as the 3 reasons or a list of 4 tell you that this information goes along with a major point.
Let me give you 4 ways that this happened.
Sometimes your teacher will repeat important points, giving you an extra chance to get all the information, or will tell you straight out that
this is very important.
Another way your teacher will add to important points is by using examples.
An example of this is the Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854.
Always include these examples in your notes, whether they're spoken or drawn on the blackboard. They'll help explain the main idea and make it clear. Sometimes your teacher will plan a discussion period so you can ask questions about things you don't understand or maybe missed in the presentation.
Okay, now are there any questions about what we've covered so far?
Try using this time to be sure that all your information is correct. And finally, always review your notes on the same day that you take them. By rereading and organizing them, you'll have an extra chance to study the subject matter and to catch any errors while the material is fresh in your mind. Well, let's try it. We're going to show you a short presentation, and at the same time, you'll see how one student took notes.
Good morning. Yesterday, we learned about how volcanoes got their name and where they usually occur. Today, we'll look at the different kinds of volcanoes. There are 3 different types of volcanoes: composite volcanoes, cinder cones, and shield volcanoes. It's very important to know these different types and why they happen. Composite volcanoes are what we usually think of when we hear the word volcano. They're formed when both lava and tephra erupt from a single central vent. Tephra is the name for rock fragments which can be very large or very small. When the lava and the tephra erupt, they pile up in layers around the vent and form a large cone-shaped mountain. Mount Vesuvius in Italy and Mount Fuji in Japan are 2 famous examples of composite volcanoes.
Well, I think you can see that by listening carefully, dealing with just the major points, and using a little shorthand, anyone can take good notes. Now let's listen to the rest of the presentation. This time, you take your own notes. Turn the tape off once again until you have paper and pen or pencil.
Cinder cones look like composite volcanoes, but there's one important difference: the materials that they're made up of. Unlike the composite volcano, cinder cones erupt very little lava. Instead, they erupt mostly small cinder-sized bits of tephra. But even though the materials are different, they're formed in the same way. The tephra erupts out of a central vent and piles up around it to form a cone-shaped mountain. Paricutin in Mexico is a famous example of a cinder cone. Shield volcanoes are very different in shape from composite volcanoes or cinder cones. Instead of having a single central vent, shield volcanoes have several different vents which erupt mostly lava. This lava spreads out in a wide area and builds up layers which create a low, broad mountain. Mauna Loa in Hawaii is a famous example of a shield volcano. Tomorrow, we'll look at what happens when a volcano erupts. We'll begin with a film. So instead of meeting here, go directly to the Resource Center.
Now that you've taken your own notes, compare them with the notes on the screen to see how you did. If you miss some points, don't be discouraged. Taking notes is a skill, and you need to practice it. The more you practice, the better you'll get. At the end of the program, there are 4 more presentations which will give you even more practice. So, there's a lot to studying properly. It isn't just a matter of sitting down with a book or just showing up for class, or even watching this tape. Day by day, it's working with the ideas we've shown you here. Creating the right place to study, using the SQ3R system to get the most out of your reading, paying attention in class, and taking those good notes. Maybe you're worried that you can't, that you have special problems that set you apart from your classmates. Well, don't believe it. Every student has to work at it to be good at studying.
And if I want to get A's, which I do, I have to schedule my time.
You don't have a choice. You just have to tune TV out for a while until you get finished studying, and studying is hard, and it takes a lot of time and patience.
To get good grades, you have to listen in class, take good notes, and study hard.
Getting good grades isn't the only reason to study, because if you want to have a profession when you grow up, then you have to know things.
Well, I think if you have a positive attitude and you think that you can do things, then you're more likely to be able to succeed. If you believe you can really do something, then you'll try hard until you do it. But if you think you're really bad or you're not going to be able to do well, then you probably will sit around and worry about it instead of trying.
It makes me feel prouder, and it makes me feel like I've done something, and I've accomplished it. I've done my best, and that's all I can do.
See what I mean? Nobody said that studying's easy, only that it's important. And the way you begin is to use the things we've shown you in this tape. We hope you'll use this tape often. Just watching it once isn't going to do the job. Practice every day, and you'll see your classwork improve. Thanks for watching, and best of luck in becoming the best student you can be.
Studying a language is a lot like eating a meal. For lunch, you might have had a sandwich, something to drink, and maybe some fruit for dessert. Even though each part of your lunch was different, all the parts combined to make a tasty meal. Our language has different parts too. In fact, there are 8 of them, and they are called parts of speech. Just like the different parts of your lunch, they combine to make a very expressive language. The 8 parts of speech are nouns, pronouns, adjectives, verbs, conjunctions, adverbs, prepositions, and interjections. Now, let's look at two parts of speech, nouns and adjectives, and see what they are and how they work in sentences. A noun is a word that identifies a person, a place, an object, a quality, an action, or an idea. There are more nouns than any other parts of speech in our language. Look at this sentence. Louis said the dog ate his homework. Can you pick out the nouns? Which words fit our noun definition? Louis is a noun because it names a person. Both dog and homework are nouns because they name objects. Now here's another sentence. The teacher gave no award for laziness. Teacher names a person, so it's a noun. Award names an object, so it too is a noun. How about laziness? Well, it's a noun too, because it names a quality. As useful as nouns are, we wouldn't know much about them without adjectives. Adjectives describe, qualify, or limit nouns and pronouns and tell us more about them. For example, tulips is a noun. When we put red in front of it, it describes the tulips. Tall describes them too, and so does three. We've used these adjectives to paint a word picture of a specific bunch of tulips. Now, as a homework assignment, I'd like you to bring in 3 ads from a newspaper or magazine. Circle all the nouns with one color and all the adjectives with another color.
The focus of today's class is natural resources. Natural resources are the Earth's products and features which support life and satisfy our needs. Natural resources are all around us. Some examples are land, water, trees, animals, minerals, air, and sunshine. We use these resources for producing 3 types of things: food, fuel, and finished goods. Some examples of finished goods are the chair you're sitting in, the books you read, and the clothes you wear. As useful as they are, we run into problems when we don't use resources wisely. For example, poor farming methods have ruined fertile farmlands. Chemicals sprayed on crops can be washed off by rain and end up as pollution in our water supply, where they can kill the fish. Hunters have killed off entire species of birds and animals. A good example of this is the passenger pigeon, which used to fly in huge flocks. Today, there aren't any more. Fumes from cars and trucks, smoke from factories put poisons into the air, and this air pollution is a danger to our health. So we need to be especially careful in the way we use these resources. We always have to be aware of how their use will affect both us and the world around us. Now, for your homework assignment, I'd like you to try something that will really make you think about this. Try thinking if there are any ways in which we in this school misuse natural resources. Once you've identified any problems, try coming up with the solutions to them. Also, read Chapter 7 in your textbook.
The handout I distributed on the first day of class stated that the midterm exam would be on the 29th. I'm sure that you're all aware that this Friday is the 29th. With that in mind, I thought we'd use today's class as a review session. Let's begin with geometric figures. We've been studying quadrilaterals and triangles. As you remember, quadrilaterals are closed figures with 4 straight sides. The different shapes are called trapezoids, parallelograms, rectangles, and squares. Trapezoids have one pair of sides which are parallel. This one looks like a triangle with its top cut off. Parallelograms have 2 pairs of sides which are parallel. Just remember the word parallel, and you can't miss this one. Rectangles are parallelograms, but with a big difference. Unlike the parallelogram, all the angles in the rectangle are right angles. Squares are parallelograms with yet another difference. In addition to having all right angles, all the sides are equal in length. Now let's review triangles. Triangles are closed, 3-sided figures. We've covered 3 types of triangles: the isosceles, the equilateral, and the scalene triangle. Isosceles triangles have 2 sides of the same length and 2 equal angles. Equilateral triangles are the squares of the triangle crowd. All of these sides and angles are equal. Scalene triangles always have 3 unequal sides. It's very important that you know what each of these shapes is and what makes it special. This will be on the midterm.
Over the last few weeks, we've been studying different aspects of the Civil War. We've looked at its causes, at each side's mobilization efforts, at the activities on the home fronts, and at the roles the great generals played on both sides. Speaking of generals, your general reports are due on Wednesday. Today's topic is to examine the results of the war. In terms of human casualties, the Civil War cost more than any other war America has been involved in. Almost 1 million men were killed or wounded, and about 500,000 died from disease. The financial cost of the war is difficult to estimate. The direct costs for 4 years of fighting totaled more than $3 billion for the North and more than $2 billion for the South. Other costs, such as pensions, burdened the nation for many years after the war was over. Overall, the total cost for both sides was probably about $15 billion. That might not sound like so much in today's terms, but let me tell you, it was a staggering sum of money in those days. Because the fighting took place in the South, that's where most of the damage occurred. Many southern towns and cities were destroyed. The system of railroads was shattered, and southern industry almost stopped completely. But perhaps the most important result of the war was the heritage of bitterness and grief it left on both sides. This leads up to that period called the Reconstruction. Let's take a break here, and I'll tell you about the test that's scheduled for next week. It will cover everything we've studied about the Civil War. 25% will be fill in the blank, and the rest will be essay. Important points to remember are the most famous battles, the causes leading up to the war, and why it's been called the first modern war.